to your Voice in Power Hour on the My Voice in Power show for Unity Live Radio. I'm not sure how many of you know, but I'm also a writer, and over the last few years I have self-published 4 books. They are all about the trauma I've experienced from childhood to adulthood and the journey of my healing. Journaling is talked about a lot when it comes to healing, and if you can get to grips with it, it does help. The transfer of energy as you write on a page, type on a screen, or record your voice into a machine is really powerful and a very transformative process. It can be difficult to see the words on the page or hear them played back, but it does make room in your mind to be able to process and see things differently, and this is what helps you to heal. Healing is never straightforward and can feel just as traumatizing as the event you are trying to heal from. But when you reach the other side, you can see it is worth it, and the peace that you begin to gain and learn to accept becomes divine. I say that like that because having peace to start with can also feel traumatizing when it is not what you are used to, because that is not how your mind and body have been, that's not what your mind and body have been built for. Well, that's what they've been built for, but that's not how you have been able to grow and function. So you're left always feeling like you are surviving because you're still in survival mode, because it is all your body knows. So teaching it to be different is scary. It is during my healing process of accepting and learning to be at peace that gave me the most anxiety attacks, to the point where during my sleep training my body would automatically wake itself up in a panic because it was relaxed, meaning that I would never get to hit that deep sleep mode. Where I have been subjected to trauma for so long, from such a young age, my natural response to everything will always be fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. For those of you who do not know what those stages entail, I shall elaborate further. Fight or flight is part of our natural survival instincts. It means we are preparing to either face a dangerous situation or leave one. To freeze would mean you are unable to move or act in any way, usually because of the amount of fear, which induces so much stress into your body that you cannot move, or maybe the situation is too dangerous for you to move from. Fawn is when you act in a way of trying to please the person or people in order to try and prevent any conflict. But now I know this, I know how to question myself and how to sometimes think before I speak. Even though the body is under a high amount of stress, the way it responds is amazing. Your pupils dilate so your eyes can take in more light. This improves your eyesight so you can focus more on the danger, leaving you to experience either tunnel vision or sharper vision. Your ears perk up so you can hear more. Your heart rate increases as a faster heart rate can feed more blood, oxygen and energy to the body, giving you power to be able to get away or fight. Your lungs allow your breathing to become more shallow, allowing more oxygen to get to your muscles. Your skin will become pale where your blood vessels are directing more blood to where it's needed, meaning your hands and feet become cold. Your muscles tense, and this is why you shake if you're not moving, and your blood will leave your digestive system, causing you to feel sick and get butterflies in your tummy. Your mind processes your thoughts quicker so that you can make on-the-spot decisions if your body is in freeze mode. Rather than fight or flight, you can feel dizzy or lightheaded as your perception of pain decreases temporarily. You can have psychological effects too, such as nervousness and acute stress, which increases the intensity of anger or movements, or your mind can just go blank. Having awareness of ourselves and situations is important for all aspects of life. So now I'm going to give you some information for you to learn and to be able to know when you are in any of these responses. So things you would expect to be going on during flight responses are a tight jaw or grinding of teeth, an urge to punch something, feeling intense anger, a desire to stomp or kick, crying, glaring at people angrily, upset stomach feeling like it's in knots or burning, and attacking the source of danger. When feeling in the flight response, you may be excessively exercising, feeling fidgety or tense or tapped, constantly moving your legs, feet and arms, have a restless body, have a sensation of numbness in extreme and dilated eyes. During the freeze response, neither fight or flight feels like it is an option, and you will experience pale skin, a sense of dread, feel stiff, heavy, cold or numb, loud pounding heart, decrease in heart rate, and sense tolerated stress. The form response is typically used after the event of being in fight, flight, or freeze, and is used to help avoid being in difficult situations or reduce the amount of abuse you have to go through if it is something you're constantly experiencing. So you would be consistently doing what others want and expect of you, regardless of how it feels for you. This behaviour is typically seen in children who are in households with narcissistic or abusive carers, thus making it easier for people to abuse you during your adult life, which you would be ultimately looking forward to, as you would have felt that it's when you get away from it all. And you do, but without knowing the process of healing, you'll be open and subjected to either more abuse or isolated living, or both, in order to prevent anyone else being around you. If you feel like you are suffering with any of these symptoms, then please contact your GP as soon as possible so they can put you in contact with the appropriate services. The Your Voice in Power Hour is a bit different tonight because the person I spoke to wasn't feeling comfortable about being interviewed. But I did not think that was a good enough reason for her not to be heard and for her work not to be shared, especially as she has been very supportive in her role of sharing and promoting my books on her platforms as part of her business. So JJ Barnes, like many of us out there, is a woman with many talents. I first got to know JJ Barnes from Twitter when I was tagged in one of her posts about interviewing and sharing the work of authors. I soon came to learn that JJ is an author too. JJ Barnes has written 4 novels and co-written a children's book with her daughter. That sounds like an amazing thing to do, a book from the vivid imagination of a child. She has also written 1 non-fiction writing advice book. She has also illustrated a children's poetry and colouring in book written by her friend Sarah Wood. Lily Prospero and the Magic Rabbit and Lily Prospero and the Mermaid's Curse are JJ's first 2 books, and the first in her Lily Prospero series are about 2 teenage girls discovering incredible magic and learning about their friendship in the face of danger. Emerald Wren and the Coven of 7 is an adult urban fantasy book about a coven of witches who set out to stop a man who is burning women alive. This book title sounds like the perfect way to describe how it feels when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, but that's a story for a different show, much like the one we had last week. What Ivy Wants is a contemporary romance about the changes in Ivy's life after her husband ends their marriage over the phone on her 30th birthday. JJ's children's book, Nature Girl vs. Worst Nightmare, was her daughter's story about the character she made up to play as on the school playground. I asked JJ which one of her books was her favourite, and she said, "This is so hard. I truly love Magic Rabbit. It was the first book I wrote. It took me a decade to get it right. What Ivy Wants is the most personal, so I feel the closest to Ivy of all of my characters. She isn't me and her life isn't mine, but I poured so much of my own experience of divorce and self-discovery into her that she feels like part of me. For that reason, What Ivy Wants could be my favourite, but it's very hard to pick." From what I have seen, JJ promotes so much more of others than she does of herself. I think this is such a great thing to do, but I asked her what makes her do it. JJ said it's really hard to be a creative person. The world is set up for the academics, and so many creatives force themselves to become round pegs in square holes because they're made to feel like that's the only way to succeed in life. But we're not square pegs, we're round pegs, and we should be celebrated and supported for it. I want to be able to do that for people because I needed that in my own life. JJ has been writing her whole life, really. Before she could write properly, she drew comic books because she had a head full of stories that needed to come out. But she started writing what would ultimately become Lily Prospero and the Magic Rabbit when she was about 20. It eventually came out when she was 30, but she still took that decade of working on it as being a writer. She is currently writing the novelisation of a film she and her team began prior to lockdown called Grace March. It was a wonderful production with an incredible cast, but obviously things went a bit wrong with the pandemic and the cast and crew spread around the world. So she is writing the book of the story to both let the world experience these characters and this world that we are so proud of, and hopefully drum up the renewed interest in the film. J.J. Barnes has a company called Siren Stories, and they recently won an award called Luke's Life Award, the best independent entertainment business. They collaborate with independent creators such as authors, poets, actors, singers, etc. to produce their work and release it. JJ and her company Siren Stories have made a movie using a script written by JJ Barnes herself. With JJ starting off as an author, I was interested to know if there was much difference in script writing and book writing, and how JJ has been able to adapt from one to the other. JJ said she had to learn the differences the hard way, as she had never written a script professionally before, and when they got to set, it caused confusion. For instance, a scene in a book is a complete mini unit of a story, and it can move through rooms as the characters walk around and discuss a plot point. However, in a script, each time they move from a scene into another room, it's an entirely new scene. Each room needs to be set up and lit and prepped for the actors to perform in it. So even if they enter a room for just a few seconds and leave again, that takes the entire setup process and needs to be planned and organised and arranged. It changes how you write a story when you realise how much effort goes into actually producing it, and whether having them move from a room into another is worth the effort. Also, the director, makeup artist, set designer, costume designer, etc. impact how your story will look and be performed massively. The writer is just the words in the story. How the story looks and is told isn't up to you. Some directors don't appreciate instructions from the actors to do with the mood or the way the words are said, etc., as that's their job. JJ added that this is one of the things she likes the most about writing and directing. She sees the story so clearly in her head, and she likes to make sure it looks how she wants it to look rather than how somebody else wants it to look. My next question to JJ was about becoming a filmmaker and what made her want to do it. She said it was pretty simple, really. Not simple to actually achieve it, but simple to set out to do it. Her and her partner Jonathan wanted to make a film, but they had no experience and no budget, but they are stubborn and determined. They were on the bus one day heading on a night out and decided, screw it, let's just do it. So instead of their planned night out, they got a pen and paper, sat in the pub and texted everybody they knew to find out if they'd be willing to work long hours for no money to appear in a film made by two inexperienced dreamers. Then they text JJ's parents, who have a holiday let, to see if they could use it for 3 weeks to make a film. Once they had their cast and location, they started working out what story they could tell. They decided a spooky horror would fit the budget and location, worked on the characters and their dynamics, then wrote their script. John's mother bought him an audio kit for Christmas. JJ's father bought her a video camera for her birthday. Then they did it. They wrote it and filmed it. JJ edited it. John scored it. They wrote and recorded the majority of the songs on the soundtrack, and JJ Barnes even sings on one. Then they put it on YouTube, and hundreds and thousands of people tuned in for the premiere. It has been an incredible experience. Well, it does sound like an amazing thing to do, and it is something I would like to do myself. Well, not the whole filmmaking, but I would like my autobiography to become a movie, and would like to be involved in the process and have an input rather than do the whole thing myself. The movie that JJ and her husband made is called Hollowhood. It's about two women, Olivia and Penny, who have recently split up. They're going away with a friend group for Halloween weekend to a little village called Hollowhood. Olivia hopes to rekindle their romance, but Penny is still hurt by their split. That's the heart of the story. It's why you show up. It's the thread that remains constant throughout, and their relationship is the central pivot around the rest of the story that is told. The rest of the story is about experiences whilst in Hollowhood. The creepy locals seem to stare at the friends, and a strange man with a missing wife warns them they're in danger. When Halloween arrives, the friends start going missing. Spooky. JJ's planning her next movie as her wonderful actors and had such a brilliant time making Hollowhood. They have volunteered their services for the next project. They have several scripts and even more ideas. They just need to work out who's available and when so they can get everybody together to film again. Right, that brings us to the end of the Your Voice in Power Hour. Next is the social media question of the week. But yeah, let me just say, it's not something I've ever thought about before, but this interview sparked a curiosity in my brain. So I went on a little hunt to see who else out there has become a screenwriter after being an author, and I was actually quite intrigued. It turns out that there's a big difference between being an author and being a screenwriter. Screenwriting is a visual medium, so there is no opportunity to write a detailed backstory for the characters. Excuse me, sorry. They only have a 90 to 100 pages to convey a visual story, and one page is only equal to 1 minute of screen time. When you are writing a book, there is time for this, and it is expected to help give some direction and clarification on the characters and who they are. The people who read the screenplays do not have time to read the amount of detail. One of the few people who was successful in having screenwrites after being an author was Agatha Christie. I remember when I was younger, and Aunt used to love her books and TV series. She is the best-selling novelist of all time with 66 detective novels and 14 short story collections. It was the book Murder at the Vicarage that introduced the character Miss Marple. Agatha went on to adapt her story The Queen's Nest for TV after not liking any of the adaptations of her work by others. Another person was George R.R. Martin, and he is the creator of the Game of Thrones. Through his series of A Song of Ice and Fire novels, he also hired as the writer and producer for the series Beauty and the Beast. I think I quite liked that series, but never quite got into the Game of Thrones. From what I can gather, Spike Lee is an author and screenwriter, but has not adapted any of his books into movies, but has adapted a screenplay which he won a BAFTA award for, and the play was Black Klansman. He also got an award for the best original screenplay, Do the Right Thing. On the flip side of things, The Omen by David Seltzer is one of the rare films that has been turned into a book by the person who screenwrote it. The book was released 2 weeks before the film premiere. Films being produced into books started in 1910s and 20s for silent films like London After Midnight. One of the first films that had speaking in became a book by was King Kong. This method was popular in the 70s as it was the only way to re-experience popular movies without the use of TV or having to keep releasing it in theatres. The first ever video game to become a book was Shadowkeep in 1984. Another reason why this method was popular was because it gave those who had seen the movies more of a chance to explore the characters further. Right, so now this week's question for social media was, what are your favourite book/movie adaptations and why? The first response I got was from HB. She says there are a lot of good ones. One that springs to mind immediately was Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. It was the first time she remembers seeing something so different. The use of original language and modern visuals blew her away when she first watched it. She went on to say that she is not the Matrix trilogy. She went on to say that she is not sure that the Matrix trilogy counts as it was technically a graphic novel, she believes, but it is iconic to her and really fueled her love of sci-fi. She also thought of the Memoirs of a Geisha was quite well done. I have to say, even though I did not know that Memoirs of a Geisha was an adaptation, as I'm saying this in my head, I'm thinking it should have been at least a little obvious from the title, but hey, it's a good film nonetheless. The next person said Divergent. This is a film trilogy based on the novels by Veronica Roth. The books are based on young people trying to find out who they are and where they fit in. The movies are sci-fi and full of action, The person didn't know why they chose this adaptation, she just knows she loved it. Sharon chose Slumdog Millionaire. This film is about a teenager who won a game show. He was suspected of cheating and went back to his past to show how he knew the answers. The book was called Q&A. For Sharon, the film was the closest personal visualization, like how she saw it in her mind, of any book that she had ever read. Even though some bits were missed in the film, which she found disappointing, overall it was a great film. A few people didn't have any suggestions, and Karen said she didn't have a favourite, but the last film she watched that had been adapted from a book was 50 Shades of Grey, and she didn't really like either. This film certainly raised a few eyebrows. I bought the book but never got round to reading it, but I did watch all the films. The whole book and film series sparked some very interesting conversations, down to the difference of opinion as to whether or not Grey was abusive. Some argued that there had been something wrong with a woman who wanted to be treated in that way. In my opinion, the film portrays a man who has not had a great upbringing, hence his need for control, but he also knows what he likes and what he wants and how he wants it, and does his best to treat the woman well from what he knows or thinks. I think the woman was intrigued, and that's what led her into wanting to be with him. I think for her it was a way of being out of control while still having rules to follow, as she liked to do things by the book in general. But like the rest of us, she had a rebellious side, and this was a better suited way for her to let it out. For those who liked it, I think the enchantment laid in the vision of the lovely setup in the playroom. Grey was confident, knew what he wanted, and had nice things, and most importantly was very romantic. There was a time and a place for everything, and everything was always in its place, with some added spontaneity. I haven't read a book in a long while, but I do love the idea of cozying up in a corner of a room or on a window ledge in the window bay with a blanket and a giant mug of mocha and just reading with nothing but the sounds of the birds singing and the river gently flowing. But the trouble these days is that when I'm not battling chronic pain, I'm busy or I'm more tired than I think I am, and don't find that out until I start reading and I'm about 2 pages in, and by then I'm sleeping. By the time I get to picking the book back up again the next evening, I have to start the book again because I can't remember what's going on. The last book I read, other than the ones I wrote whilst I was editing, were biographies of other people who had also experienced trauma. Long gone are the days when I always used to have a book in my hand, no matter where I was or what I was doing. But I look forward to them coming back. So by now, you'll probably guess that I do not have a book to movie favourite, but one book that came to mind is one that my children read when they were at school. I myself have not read the book, but I did enjoy the film, which is called Bridge to Terabithia. It is a beautiful film that captures the friendship and the imagination of 2 young children who have different backgrounds. The land in which they play, created by their imagination, comes to life. Sadly, one of the friends passes away, but this helps the bond of the one left behind and their sibling, as he takes her to play in the area and they create a new magic place. It's a very clever idea and a very moving film. The film is actually inspired by the true events of the book The Bridge to Terabithia, written by Catherine Patterson after her son's childhood friend was sadly struck by lightning. So let me end by saying what an amazing relationship they must have had, JJ Barnes and her husband, to share a vision and a dream and be able to come together to see it through to the point of it being so successful that they are ready to do it again. Having a great relationship is an achievement in itself, and the process of finding someone to have a relationship with can be very difficult and even harder if you have experienced a vast amount of trauma in your life. But it's not impossible. It's just a learning curve that we have to take on ourselves, whilst allowing there to be the margin of everyone is different. Whilst we do need to learn from our mistakes, we also need to see that what happened in one relationship will not happen in another. And if it does, then the intentions of the person need to be analysed, not just the act. That's also for ourselves as well, not always the other person. Unless it is abusive, then it doesn't need analysing. That needs walking away from. Learning our own love language is something that will also help with the relationship process. As you heal from trauma or any other past experiences, it can become clear that you are really not sure who you are or what you like. I remember going through this process myself and found that some things I thought I liked I didn't, but then later on found out that I did. Confusing, I know, but here's an example to make that a little clearer. Drawing was something I was good at, and so I thought I enjoyed doing it, then learned I was doing it because it was a coping mechanism that I picked up from my childhood counselling sessions. I then took art in secondary school and was a little uncomfortable when I got an A for an art homework project. After I left school, I still drew in my spare time, then somewhere along the lines it came to a stop. When I had therapy as an adult, I tried doing things to see what I liked to do. I thought back to things I used to do and drawing came to mind. I tried it and didn't like it. I discussed this with my therapist and it became clear that I was finding drawing uncomfortable because I was using it as an escape from what I was going through at the time. Whilst I was now uncomfortable with the process, I did enjoy the outcome a majority of the time. As I'm not always able to put on the paper what I can verbally envision, as I have trouble seeing things in my head. Not sure if that's an issue or if that's just naturally how I work. But anyway, with some help from my therapist, I was able to change the narrative of the process that I went through when I was drawing to help make it a more enjoyable experience. To the point where I have used one of my own drawings on the front cover of my first book called Traumetry. Not really sure if that explains what I was trying to get at, but it's a bit like when someone buys you something. In your first relationship, you have learned that the person you were with brought you things to try and subtly control you, with it becoming the reason why you should listen to them and do as they say or ask. This experience could put you off of being someone who always wants to buy you gifts. However, this shouldn't be the case because in the new relationship, the person could be buying you things just because that is how they do things. There are some books out there that have not yet been made into movies. I was surprised to find that some of these books have been written by Stephen King. I thought all of his books were movies, but he has a book series called The Dark Tower on the website How Stuff Works. It says that this book series has been deemed too big, expensive, and technically daunting. I was almost surprised to see, well, I'm not sure why I was surprised, as it's not anything I know about or have looked into before, but still I was surprised to see the films Stand By Me and The Green Mile, both of which I love, were based on short stories by Stephen King. Another book of his that is not yet a film is The Stand, even though his fans have wanted it to be a movie since it was first published in 1978. However, it was made into a bad TV miniseries in 1994. The book is a post-apocalyptic horror and is 823 pages. That sounds like a mad amount of pages. I wonder how he managed to get so many and how long it took him to write it. In fact, I wonder how long it took him to write all of his books, as he has written 64 novels and over 200 short stories, and he has sold more than 350 million copies. I've definitely got some work to do if I wanted to catch up with that. I remember seeing a lot of his books around whilst I was growing up, as my auntie was a big fan of his and she often watched the movies after reading the books. I've seen a lot of the adaptations, and I think my favourite film of his when I was younger was Sleepwalkers. And I have no idea why and can't even tell you when I last watched it. I looked it up to see what it was about, and it is about shapeshifters, which is something I'm still quite interested in, even though I probably wasn't aware that is what was actually going on at the time. The next piece of information is actually a bit off-putting, as they were shape-shifting to eat virgin girls. The film is based on one of his unpublished short stories, so that would explain why I've never seen the book. Wouldn't it have been good if they had blockbusters? They had the book, the movie it was based on next to it. In fact, it's still not a bad idea now. The libraries could do it. Talking of libraries, I would love to visit a human library that they have in Copenhagen in Denmark. It is open every day from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. and they are a learning platform who are operational in 6 continents and are involved in activities in more than 80 countries and has been going since spring 2000. Imagine having all 3 in one place. Sounds like a pavement paradise to me. and a place I would visit all the time. The only thing I would argue is the length of time that you can talk for, because I think I would be able to talk for a bit longer than that. But I guess they have to be fair to others who would like to also be part of it and to the human books. I headed over to my social media again and asked, if you were a book, what would your title be and what would you be about? Claire said her book would be called Diary of a Mixed Race Chick, and it would be about her life experiences and life from her viewing. Ebbs replied to my question saying her book would be called Universal You, Universal Me, and it would be primarily be about learning how to be open and how to receive all that the universe has in store for you and for me, possibly with some emphasis on how to learn manifesting as a novice to the art. Generally, a book that would keep you and me focused on becoming aligned and intertwined with a universal you and a universal me. Tessa said her book would be called Silent Paradise, and it would be about her journey living with her illness with the beauty that life still holds. Tonight's show is now coming to an end. Thank you for listening, and remember to keep your thoughts, questions and stories and dilemmas coming in to myvoiceandpower@outlook.com. If you are local to the Reading area or happy to travel here, there are some events that are happening that you may be interested to attend in light of Black History Month. On the 24th of October, there is a children's stillbound workshop at the Culture Mix Arts Centre, 7 Queen's Walk at 4:30 p.m. On Friday the 21st of October, Desmond Tutu's daughter will be sharing her story at the Reading Minster Church at 7:30 p.m. Saturday the 24th of October at 5 p.m. at the South Street Arts Centre, there is a play by Doris Alamadi called I Belong, which is suitable for all ages. On Monday the 24th of October, ACRE will be having an annual general meeting at the Reading Council Chambers at 6:30 p.m. They will be having a voluntary community awards meeting on Thursday the 27th of October. And lastly, tune in again to Unity Live Radio to check out our new show on Sunday called Chilled Connect Tunes from 12 p.m. until 3 p.m. UK time, where I will be playing some chilled vibes and sharing some news from the world of mental health. Thanks again for listening. I'll be back next week. If you would like your voice to be heard on the Your Voice in Power Hour, then why not get in touch with me at myvoiceandpower@outlook.com.